Success, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Vote Safe webinar with Blue Action Democrats. I am Michelle Reinhardt, the president of Blue Action Democrats Southwest Austin. Blue Action Democrats, if you haven't heard of us, we're a Democratic club in Southwest Austin, although we do have chapters all over Austin and Bexar County now. And we're really focused on getting out the vote in Southwest Austin. So we are going to have a nonpartisan conversation tonight about voting, about what to expect when you vote, about when you can vote, where you can vote, those kinds of questions. We invite you to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be taking a look at those throughout the evening. And we have some special guests with us tonight. We have Bruce Elfant, who is the tax assessor collector, and he's going to be here to talk to us about voter registration, what that's been looking like, some predictions around voting. We will also have Dana DeBeauvoir, who's joining us, the Travis County Clerk. She'll be giving us an update on how today went. We're waiting, she's probably busy right now, but we're waiting for her to join our webinar in just a second. Ann Howard, who is a Democratic candidate for County Commissioner, is also joining us. And Ed Scruggs, who is leading our Project Vote Safe effort in Southwest Austin. And I'd like to start with Ed this morning. Or not this morning, it's this evening.
Only seems like morning.
That's
yes.
right. I feel like you've been up a really long time.
So long.
So why don't you give us an update, Ed? You've been out at the polls all day. So what's been going on? What have you been seeing?
This has been an incredible day. I've never seen anything like it. I was at the Shady Hollow shopping center there at Brody and Slaughter, started the day there, then came over to where I am now at Austin Oaks Church, which is around the William Cannon Mopac area, two very popular early vote centers. When I pulled into Shady Hollow Village this morning at about 6:30, I could not believe that the lot was full. And then the line was already like a line you would see on the last day of early voting. It snaked around the entire building, and there were hundreds of people in line. And so if you got in line at 7 a.m., you had a 3-hour wait to vote. And it was almost an emotional reaction. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, part of the project that we have going is volunteers. We are passing out water and snacks. We're giving chairs to people who need it because it's such a long wait in line. And our volunteers did such a fantastic job today. Deb, Rita here at Austin Oaks, passing all those things out. People were very, very appreciative. People were saying, I forgot to eat breakfast today. There are spots in line that are in the direct sunlight, so the water was vital. And we passed out so many supplies, so many snacks, so much water, we almost ran out and we had to go get some more. So we were appreciated there, but it was a great atmosphere. I would say many of the voters were Democrats just from my experience, but everyone was appreciative. It was totally nonpartisan. We really did some good work today. We were actually helping the folks running that voting precinct because they couldn't be outside and see what was going on. We helped with the line. Lots of questions about curbside voting, about mail-in voting. People had their ballots and what do they do with them? They wanted to vote in person. And we were able to answer a lot of those questions or get them to help. One of the things I really appreciated was passing out chairs. 2 women today, one was 8 months pregnant and one was 9 months pregnant. And they used our chairs for the whole 3 hours in the line. And because they wanted to go in, they probably could have cut the line if they wanted. They didn't want to do that. Used those chairs and they voted and they were happy that they did. Here at Austin Oaks, a tremendous line early on that wrapped all the way out onto Monterey. For hundreds of yards, the line went. And Rita was here passing out water and snacks as well. And it was vital, I think, in that morning. It was almost shocking to see how long the line was. But I think people get in the line and realize that because of social distancing, it's a little longer, but it's actually not as many people as you might think. I think as far as the way voting went this morning, it went pretty smoothly. my impression is that basically we're maxing out the system and trying to process as many votes as we can. If we had more voting machines, we'd probably process even more people. I mean, it's just, there were so many coming through. One issue I have is, are people remembering to vote all the way down ballot? Because some people were coming in and going out a little too quickly if they were going to vote all the way down ballot. So I hope people remember to do that. It is a little longer ballot, but all in all, a fantastic day. I am really pumped and optimistic about the rest of early voting, and I think this is a positive sign.
So Ann, I know Ann Howard is one of those down ballot races. She's running for county commissioner. I wonder what your experience was, Ann. You were around polling places today too, correct?
Yeah, I started at 7 a.m. and I hit probably about 8 different polling places. And the first was a little nerve-wracking. I was in Westlake at a Methodist church, and the line was, it seemed like a mile long, and none of the machines were working. And that was a little scary, because everybody was patient and kind, but one guy got upset, and it was a line sort of like that. But as I, found people either that I knew or that recognized me, or sometimes I'd hold a sign and try to get some attention, most people were just in pretty high spirits and just trying to make sure they did it exactly right. As far as the down ballot thing, I'll just share that we ended up voting this evening at noon. I had checked at the University of Texas. It's precinct 311. And that's usually a big box for us Democrats, lots of voters in that 311. And there were 2 sites on the University of Texas, Gregory Gym and the undergraduate library. And it was like a ghost town. And so my husband and I were together. We ended up having a good conversation about Prop A with the lady, but it was nerve-wracking. So we realized, since we wanted to vote with our son this evening and be at home for this call, we went back to UT and voted. And there were 2 gals in front of me in line, and that was it. I'll tell you, with the ballot as long as it is, it was nerve-wracking finding my own name, and then making sure I pushed the right button to vote for myself. So anyway, that's my 3rd time. I voted for myself in March, and I voted for myself in July, and I'm sure hoping 3rd time is the charm. The most exciting part was we went outside from the library. There were some students talking amongst some signs, and we asked them to take our picture, and then they said, are you, or I probably said, I'm Ann Howard, and they're like, oh my gosh. And so then they took pictures with us, and it was really a rewarding end of the first day of early voting.
And that's fantastic that you were able to vote so quickly at the end of the day. And it looks like, from Ed's point of view, the lines really did go down as the day went on, I suppose. Bruce, what do you think of that? Is that pretty much what we would have expected? Oh, you may have to unmute.
Yes, I was working on it. The first day of early voting is always going to be the heaviest. This was probably heavier than any first day we've seen in a very long time. And we kind of saw this coming with the voter registration effort. When there's a lot of voter registration activity, it follows that there's going to be a lot of voting. And so I think today is probably what Dana would have expected. And hopefully things went really smooth. I do agree with her that probably it'll calm down a little bit. The lines won't be as long until we get towards the end of early voting. And we certainly want to encourage everybody to go to votetravis.com and use the wait time map and print out a copy of your ballot and mark it up. We were talking earlier about down ballot, and we want people to do their research before they go vote, so they can mark up the ballot, and their vote will go faster and it'll accommodate the lines better.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about that voter registration? I mean, we're at 97%. What are the raw numbers on that? And how is that going to impact this election, do you think?
I hope that we're going to see a record turnout. and I hope we're ready for it. We're just blown away by 97%. 4 years ago, we were at 92.6%, and we thought that was pretty cool. 2 years ago, we were at 94.5%, and we thought, wow, it can never get higher. And here we are at 97%. And I just checked my my Twitter feed. Bradley Whitford just retweeted Travis County's 97%. Paul Begala just retweeted it. We're getting national attention for this, and now it's important that we follow through. If we have 97% registration and we don't follow through with a high turnout, then it's kind of embarrassing. But I don't think we're going to be embarrassed, and my hope is that we're going to see a 70% turnout or higher.
So what makes you think 70%? Just the interest, the levels that we saw today?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a number of years, and I remember 08, and in 08 in November, we had about a 67, 68%, not quite 70. And I think that the interest and the intensity is higher than in 08. 08 was a pretty incredible year, as we all remember. But I think the intensity, for a variety of reasons, is ramped up even more. And so I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw 70 or even 75%, which would be incredible.
Add something, Michelle, that one thing that was fascinating today is, you know, those of us who've been in this now, we've been with Dana and we've seen the new machines. Think about even prior to March, she was out showing the new machines. It seemed like every night across the community. And in Westlake, the woman who did get to vote first after, you know, they all waited about an hour and 20 minutes for the machines to start working, she came out and said, y'all, it's so different. I've never seen a machine like that. It took a while to figure it out. You know, she clearly had not voted in March and had not voted in July. And so I think that was also today part of, besides just the volume of turnout, it took people a while to to just get their little thingy on their finger. You know, it was all new and exciting. There was a young man in front of my son who was voting, and he was just being so careful. Now, what do I do? You know, he had never voted before. So it's pretty darn cool.
Ed, did you see first-time voters today?
Oh, yeah. There were plenty. There were some people that brought their kids. And one thing that I did here, too, some people are just now realizing there's not straight ticket voting. And so they're like, I had to go through every single race, you know. So that's going to surprise some people when they get in there. And then you have new machinery, and then you have COVID, and you have all these different things. So in my mind, voters are really overcoming a lot to come out and do this, which is a sign of how committed they are. There's nothing you could have done to stop these people from voting today. And just touching quickly on the pandemic and safety issues, we were out as volunteers. We had gloves on, we had masks to give people. We sanitized the chairs, the water, the snacks, etc. Only saw one couple show up without masks who refused to wear one. And that didn't go very well with the people around them, who gave them about 20 yards in the line of space. And I think they felt so out of place, they couldn't handle it. And after about 20 minutes, they left. That was the only case I saw like that all day. We were passing out gloves. That was real popular. And then people were taking pains to socially distance in line. And there would be times where it would get a little crowded and people would say, hey, let's all space it out. Everyone was being very cooperative. Not a lot of talking in line, which you usually kind of see, I think, because people get it. So people were being very respectful of one another, because I've never really seen a vote line that serious before, which was, you know, people are they're on a kind of a mission to do this. And it's also, there's a lot at stake. They have to pay attention to what's going on. That was one thing that definitely stood out to me.
I think it's also just a sign of the times, you know, and I guess I'm getting old, you know, but people were either looking at a phone or they had a reading device and were looking at that. I did see one paperback book, but most people, you know, as I'm trying to engage them, they're in their zone, you know, taking care of business while they're waiting in line.
I'd like to circle back with Bruce because we talked a little bit about the Travis County voter registration numbers, but it's not just Travis. I mean, we have seen like almost 300,000 new voters added in this last, 2 months of voter registration when we were able to register voters. We're up to almost 17 million registered voters in Texas. It was 16.9 something, right, at the last count.
Yeah,
So-
and there was an article in the Chronicle and the Statesman, I believe. I saw the Chronicle article. Cool. That a big chunk of that increased voter registration was along the I-35 corridor. I was stunned to see that Williamson County, Hayes County, 25% increase, I think I read. I mean, that was incredible. And that's very exciting for those counties. So hopefully the whole central Texas area will see increased participation.
Well, it's really interesting because because in that article that you cited, the Houston Chronicle, or Houston Chronicle one, they talk specifically about Hayes, Williamson, and Comal being up by like 24% in voter registration.
Yes.
So what do you think? What do you think is driving that? Is it just the current
Blue Action Dems? Blue
Yeah.
Action Dems.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. That there's more interest in even in a pandemic, when people feel like they have to get out there and register and vote, they're going to figure out a way to do it. But I do think that all the activities here in Travis County have impacted all the surrounding counties. I mean, we have 7,500 volunteer deputy registrars, and hundreds of them are Williamson, Hayes, Bastrop. And so a lot of our VDRs are doing Travis County and Hayes and Williamson, and we trained a lot of their people. And so, we have the infrastructure to be able to help, and these smaller counties don't. So I do think that a lot of it has to do with groups like Blue Action Democrats and our infrastructure. And then of course, just this is a year where people want to be counted.
Well, I'm just curious. I have a couple of little polls that I did, so I'm just going to launch one so our folks can respond. But the woman of the hour has arrived. Dana DeBeauvoir has joined us. Hey, how's it going today? How did it go? Can you give us an update?
Good evening. And I'm sorry I'm in such a dark spot. I have a new computer and camera, and I did have a little bit of trouble signing on. So I'm so sorry I'm running late. It has been an absolutely fantastic day. We have 53,000 people who have already voted.
Wow.
Oh my God. Wow.
And we're not done, because all of the locations are still up and running. I anticipate we won't see them start to shut down until 8 p.m.
Wow. So
Wow.
were those 53,000 votes, are those just in person, or are we counting mail-in as well, Dana?
No, mail-in's different.
Okay.
We've taken in about, you know what? I've interposed 2 digits. I'm so sorry. It's not 53, it's 35. I'm so sorry. It's 35,000 people, but we also have another, probably 8,000 people who have already come through hand delivery through the drive-through. I've got another 15,000 ballots that have already been received by us through the Postal Service. And I only have a few thousand that are in the rotation right now of 48 hours for when somebody sends us a new request and then we reply back. So the numbers are swelling. We knew it was going to be a big day. It was bigger than we thought, and we are really tickled about that. We have had some voters have to wait in line. One fellow said he waited in line for 3 hours. I feel so badly for that, but I appreciate his tenacity. He, like a lot of voters today, this is pent-up demand. They are ready to vote. They've been ready to vote for a while, and they want to get it over with and celebrate it.
What was your expectation, Dana? Did that pretty much meet it? I mean, we didn't break any records or anything, right?
No, we're breaking records right and left.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What would have been normal for, let's say, start with by mail. By mail for a presidential election would have been about 27,000 by mail ballots, and we would have had 60% turnout in early voting and 40% turnout on election day. All of that the records have been shattered. We will have more than 100,000 by mail ballots before this is all over. So we're looking at closer to quadruple the number. Nobody really ever did a hand delivery before. We might have had a couple of folks, but that to be at 100, that to be it's already at 7,000 or 8,000. I'm waiting for my latest numbers to come in. Is a huge turnout. We knew it was going to be a very big day because we knew voters wanted to get out there and vote, but it has turned out to be bigger than we thought.
Well, and I know Travis County voters they're good voters. They do turn out, right? So
They do.
what did you make of the Harris County number? They did blow past midday. They were past their record.
100,000. I know. I was just really thrilled with that. It seems that they've worked out some of their ways of dealing with lots and lots of voters like that at the stadium. And gosh, I wish Travis County had a stadium, but we don't have one to use. I'm so impressed with them. You know, they got hit just as hard as we did with the abrupt cancellation of the voter option to hand deliver and close down all those locations. But just to make a little bit of sense out of it, I had originally planned for 11 drive-through lanes downtown and 1 lane drive-through up here at 5501 Airport Boulevard. When we got shut down abruptly, we refigured everything up here at 5501 where I was forced to go, and we have now turned that into 16 bays for cars to pull up and go through about a 2-minute process per car to show ID, sign up, and give us their voted by mail ballot. That's all working really, really well, and it's been steadily busy from the moment we opened it.
Well, let's talk a minute about mail-in ballots. It's not too late, right?
Oh, no, heavens no.
So walk me through that whole process, what I need to do, how do I qualify? Walk me through that.
Okay. In Texas, you have to have a reason to vote by mail. The most common reason is that you are over 65 years of age. 86% of the ballots that we believe will be coming in will be local over 65 voters. So when you start hearing nonsense about how by mail is fraudulent and blah, blah, what you can do is recognize that 86% local total, you're talking about your neighbor. And we're talking about a lot of people over 65 who have never voted by mail before because they always wanted to go in person. So we're really hoping that this whole by mail effort is going to protect voters because they won't have to go inside the polling place. That's the reason most of them asked for a by mail ballot. The drive-through is going to take some of the pressure off of the post office. And we are encouraging everybody to vote as early as possible. We really don't want to see a big swell of people for election day. We'd like to see that stay at about 40% as opposed to, you know, a really big heavy turnout on election day. We want folks to come early, vote early, get this over with.
Well, it looks like from our poll results, most people on the call are planning to vote this week.
Yay, I am. I didn't get the chance to vote today, but I will be voting early. Even though I now qualify to vote for ballot by mail, I'm actually going to go in person because I really do believe that with all of the personal protective equipment for voters and all of the mask requirements and social distancing, that voting in person is very safe. So I'm going to go in person.
So tell me about what have you put into place to make voters feel the most comfortable and most protected?
We learned a lot of lessons from the July election. So a lot of what you saw that was successful in that election, you see carried forward into this one. I mentioned all voters are asked to wear a mask. We require it. If you're one of those voters who seems to think that you don't have to do your part to stop the spread of the virus and you show up without a mask on, you will still get your right to vote. But I intend to place those voters, and the training has been that we put them as far away from every other voter as we possibly can. And it would not surprise me if there was quite a bit of shaming from the other voters for deliberately threatening their health. So we've made it very, very clear, and I anticipate having very few problems at the polling place because of that. That and then voters inside the polling place never have to touch anything. So even though we clean the equipment frequently throughout the day, voters are given a little plastic finger covering to sign the e-poll book, and then they're given a popsicle stick to mark their choices on the ballot marking device. So they never touch anything at all. The only thing that they're going to handle is the piece of paper that goes into the ballot box right after the voter has voter verified the choices that are listed on that paper trail.
I have to say that popsicle stick thing works amazingly well. I did it today, and I was, I was, a little skeptical, but it works like magic. So well done on that. That really does make it possible for you to vote without touching anything. So that
Yes, it does. And we started out trying using Q-tips, and they didn't work at all. But we found out pretty quickly that these cheap and disposable popsicle sticks work great. We've also had some creative voters who just keep the little plastic covering on their finger, and they use their finger with the covering on it to go through. So that you've only got 2 different ways to mark the ballot.
That's how I did it with my finger.
With your finger covered, yeah.
I just want to congratulate Dana and thank you. I think that after Biden and Harris run the country, I want you to run the country because, this seemed like a crisis, and everything they've thrown at you, you've just been a steady leader. And I just thank you for that.
Thanks, Ann. I appreciate that. It has been of deep concern to me, these assaults on the voting process. We've seen one every single day, and I anticipate that there will be shenanigans every single day until we're through early voting. Something will happen every day, and all we have to do is just make our plea to voters that I know you're going to hear a lot of ugly stuff on social media. Just tune it out, turn it off, pay no attention to it, and do the one thing that only you can do as a voter, and that's just go vote.
So I do want to ask you, there's been some posting on social media, and I know Ed may have a little bit more details, but it's something like, don't vote this week because the governor could take away that extra, week of early voting. So reassure us that voting this week is a-okay, Dana.
Well, even the Fifth Circuit, when they made their decision that was not in voters' best interests to cancel additional locations, in their final ruling yesterday, they even said it's too late to be messing with the process. That's not a direct quote, but you get the idea. So even they believe in we have to have some semblance of free and fair elections in a democracy. I think what happened was the governor fully intended, when he suspended the hand delivery options, that he was also going to suspend those first few days of early voting too. He was going to take them back. I think he caught so much grief for tampering and trying to manipulate the election that he could not take away those early voting days. So there's a lot of speculation about it, but right now we're in the middle of it, and I don't think any court will take any action further at this point.
I do want to bring in one of the questions we have from the audience. Kay was asking about when you guys do, going back to mail-in ballots, you guys do check those signatures on the envelopes that come in.
Oh, yeah.
When will the mail-in ballot be opened by the county, and when will the ballots begin to be scanned? I know that there's a certain process that you have walked us through before. If you would do that again, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. The process in-house for curing and qualifying ballots by mail is exactly the same process that we use inside the polling place. You have to sign across that envelope, and if you don't put your signature on there, we can't count the ballot. It has to go through double checks to verify the voter registration and the correct ballot style, and then it also goes through signature verification. All of that happens by the ballot board, and they start their work at 7:30 in the morning. So we need, and the other part that we do is we also collect and create a roster of every single one of those predicted 100,000 voters who are going to vote by mail. You have to create a roster just as you would in the polling place. When you sign in, you create a roster. We will do as much processing, every bit of it, if possible, prior to election day. And then if we go on the, which means processing means doing all of that work by the ballot board. It means separating the ballot from all of its materials. laying them out flat, back bending the creases so that they'll go through the counters smoothly. We put weights on them to press them down so they're flat. And then we anticipate with 100,000 by-mail ballots that is about an 11-hour throughput for our 4 scanners. Working full-time all the time for 11 hours, we can get 100,000 ballots done. So what we're going to do is prepare all the ballots, do the processing part first so that they're ready to go at 7 a.m. on election morning to be put through the scanners. The scanners are what do the tabulation. And I am required to wait until election day to tabulate those ballots. But our intent is to have all of those by-mail ballots tabulated and included in the early voting results at 7 p.m. on election night.
Wow, that seems like a tall order.
Well, it is, and we may not be able to get all of the hand delivery items in because they all have to go through that tedious, multi-step process of, processing by mail. So we won't get those ballot boxes until after 7 p.m. when the polls close. So we have a crew that's prepared to work on the hand delivery we get in on election day, as well as the ones that we're going to continue to get in from the post office. So we'll put as many as possible in that first release of election results. And I actually don't think Travis County, and maybe not even Texas, is going to be one of those places where we're going to have a big surprise, because I think most of the elections administrators I'm visiting with are doing everything they can to include by mail in that first election result. We certainly don't want to be a part of a red mirage. And I think if we get as much by mail ballot mixed in with the election day as we possibly can, you'll see a fair representation by the end of election night for what we've got in the ballot box.
So one of the common questions I know we heard today as we were out and about was, oh, I requested a mail-in ballot, but now I want to vote in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are we recommending for those folks?
Right. The best way to do that is to take your ballot with you and go to any early voting location or any election day vote center of your choice. And surrender your ballot to the election judge and tell them you've changed your mind. They'll spoil that ballot. They'll cross you off the by-mail list, and then you will vote just a regular ballot as if that was always your plan inside the polling place. Now, we do have situations where people don't get their ballot sometimes. And of course, we're all doing everything we can to support the post office and what's been done to them. But I think if you just don't have your ballot, don't wait to vote. Just go to early voting anyway. Tell the election judge when you get there that you don't have your ballot, but that you are on the by-mail list. They will cancel you off of the by-mail list, and you will vote a provisional ballot. So that's only if you never get your ballot by mail in your mailbox. You can still make this, exchange, if you will, of the ballot once you get to an in-person place. As long as your by mail ballot doesn't show back up, then your provisional ballot that you cast in person will count.
So one of the improvements I know you guys have done is to be able to track those mail-in ballots, which is fantastic. Can I just give you a high five for that?
Yes, thank you for that. We really felt like
I've been tracking my daughters in college, so it's like, go check the mail, go check the mail.
Yes.
So
I'm really glad we were able to add that feature. I usually don't like doing new applications in the midst of the biggest election in the cycle, but I think this was really important for voters to be able to have the information at their fingertips and not overload the call center and prevent other people from getting through. So yes, go to votetravis.com, hit the mail status button, and you should enter your name and birth date. You should be able to track your ballot.
So what happens if my signature doesn't match? Will that flag it? Will I get an email? What happens, Dana, if something like that happens?
Right, the voter is notified, but the way it's required to be done in Texas is that we fill out a letter with a checklist that says why your ballot was rejected. The most common reason for rejection is that they forgot to sign across the flap on the back of the envelope. That's the most common. So it's not so much about signature comparison as it is just getting a signature in the first place. if it's signature comparison, though, you will get a letter in the mail, but I don't really like that system. I wish we had a more automated way because, of course, the transit time for the mail works both ways in us trying to get that information back to them. If a voter finds out that their ballot did not count, there is a cure period for as of election day, and then provisionals have a cure period of 6 days after election day. So depending on which category you fall in, you still have the chance to vote, even if your by-mail ballot got rejected. It's just the timing of getting you notified that I'm a little worried about.
Yeah. So get that ballot in just as soon as you can.
Get it in as soon as
All
possible.
the directions you can.
Right.
So I
The
think there's a lot of, I mean, I'm getting a lot of questions on the webinar about just concern about mail-in ballots, concern about the vote counting.
Yeah.
If I get that green step at the end that you have received my ballot and I don't get a letter, that
You're
should
good.
tell me I'm counted, right?
That's right. You are absolutely included, and your choices will be included in the 7 p.m. release of election results. That's what we're going to do our best to get all of this out the door. We know voters are concerned about it, and we don't want to be adding to their worry.
It's a lot of anxiety this year.
There really is. And there's a lot of unpleasantness on social media. So, we just try to focus on, okay, what are the things that we can address? What are the things we can control, and do our very best in those areas?
So today, your mail-in ballot, your hand-delivered ballot, those are getting prepped, like you said, and those will be counted on election day.
On election day, ballot board will start at 7:30 in the morning. So we start the processing at 7:30 in the morning. One of the things we have done in advance of ballot board is start to create the roster for the ballots that have by-mail ballots that have already come back in. You have to have that list of registered voters just as if you were in a polling place.
There is a bit of a leap of faith that maybe we took for granted last time, but everyone's so concerned about their vote counting this year.
Yes, well, we've heard, concerns about by-mail voting in the past, so it's not that unusual. I think the only thing that's unusual about this time around and the worry, do by-mail ballots really get cast, is because there are so many more people participating in by-mail programs.
Michelle, I have a quick question.
Yeah, I was about to ask you if you had anything.
Yeah, Dana was out at the polls today in Southwest Austin, and one common thing we saw was folks were coming into these long lines, and some of them had definite serious physical difficulties or illness, and they didn't know that they could vote curbside. And so we tried our best to inform them that that was an option. Do you
probably
want to
didn't
just
have you probably didn't have very many takers.
Well, we did have some, I think, but they were intrigued by the idea once they learned about it. Do you want to kind of just cover quickly, if we know someone who could benefit from curbside voting, what's the process for doing that?
Right. Well, for one thing, the process is different depending on which polling place you're at. Sometimes there's a sign in the window that says call this number or text this number. Sometimes the people, like at some of these locations, you can actually see outside, and if a car drives up to the post where we say this is where curbside voting is happening, they can see you and come out. It's all over the map about what kind of, get this out of my way, about what you're going to find at the polling place. We have always conducted curbside voting as a function of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is not intended for sort of regular voters to overtake that option, because it is limited, and we want to reserve it for folks who have difficulty getting out of their car or standing for any length of time. So by all means, it is available. If you have if you're a person with any kind of disability, feel free to use it. If you want to make an appointment, call the call center, 512-238-VOTE. Just remember 238-VOTE in our area code, and we'll help you find a place and a time. We can set up appointments. There are many ways to get at this, but the reason why you don't know very much about this option is because it has always been restricted to people with disabilities, and we have not had the problem here in Travis County of that service being abused by regular voters.
And one follow-up on that was I had several spouses for example, whose husband is very ill. And they were saying, well, if we drive up, can we both vote through curbside? And I didn't know the answer to that.
Yeah, the answer will be yes. We're not going to make them get back out. What would that person do with their spouse? So yes, we did
Exactly.
both of them at curbside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It is a small program that is easily overwhelmed. Some of the other things that we try to do to help our voters that have some difficulties is they can ask for a chair to be brought out. They can ask to be put at the front of the line. We often have women who are advanced in their pregnancies get pulled to the front of the line because they have difficulty standing with that kind of a load for a long time. So there are all kinds of ways we can help voters. We don't have to rely on just one option.
So there you go, Ed. You had a couple of
Yeah.
pregnant ladies today. You could have.
We did, and they wanted to stay in the line. We gave them chairs, but it was important. They wanted to stay in the line with everyone else, including someone who was 9 months pregnant, and she made it all the way through. So I was very proud of her.
Yes, it would be my experience that when you go to people and say, you have another option, you can drive up and do this, or you can do this, they don't want to leave the line. They will stay in the line, and that's why we've moved more to bringing out chairs for them, because they're not going to go.
Exactly.
So do they just go into the voting location, Dana? If they need to go to the front of the line, they just go up to the front?
Yeah, just go up and ask. Yeah, they'll let you in. Voters are very kind to one another in Travis County.
I'm kind of curious because I heard during July we were having that big spike of COVID.
Yeah.
I remember this coming up then that people may have been diagnosed with COVID.
Yes.
How do they vote if they haven't already made a provision for that with mail-in?
Well, we don't want you coming in if you think you're sick with COVID. So absolutely curbside. There will be a designated spot with a sign on it that says curbside voting. So they just pull their car up to where the cone and the sign is, and make whatever arrangements fit that particular location in order to get help at the curb.
Okay. And then we have a couple of questions from folks who want to help on election day. Are you still needing helpers?
Very much so. We've got everything else all nailed down, but I still need about maybe as many as 400 people for election day. We are still working on it diligently. So by all means, please come and help us. You're needed for this election.
And how do I apply for that?
The easiest way to do it is to call the call center 238 vote again, or go to votetravis.com. That website answers almost any question you could possibly think of, but it will also direct you in how to apply for a job. And we really want you to do that. We need more folks.
Is there anything particular when you say you need folks? What kind of things would they be doing?
Election day. They would be working in the polls on election day. And then we're also, that's mainly what I need. I need clerks right now. I've got all the judges recruited, but I need more workers. And then also election night for the counting station, that's a possibility too. And that's especially interesting for our 16-year-olds who want to participate in the sort of their program. They can't actually handle ballots, but they can do lots of other things on election night to make sure that the flow of ballots keeps moving smoothly through the station.
Now, if folks have applied to be a poll worker and they haven't heard yet, should they be concerned?
Well, maybe not yet, and especially if they've just now applied, because we were working through the first, oh gosh, I think it was maybe almost 3,000 responses that we got. And we don't actually hire everybody that applies, because sometimes voters only want to be in a particular area and we already have it covered, or they only want to do one kind of job and not another kind of job. So it's a matter of figuring out what works best for them where they are. So it's a bit of a process to figure out where we're going to put you.
Okay. I have a follow-up question from Tina about the surrendering of the mail-in ballot. You said you could take that with you to the polls and surrender it to the judge. She's curious about how long that takes, and she was told to do it through the drive-through at airport.
Right. It would be better to do it through the drive-through. Much, much better. We got that process down to 2 minutes per car. And it's been steady the whole time. And we can, as I said, we can expand if we need to later on. It will, you may very well spend some time going through that surrender process inside the polling place, and you've added the time that you're going to have to wait for all the voters in front of you. So yeah, it could take a little while, and it would be better to go through the drive-through. And we hope it doesn't get overloaded, because the procedure's so quick for that piece of it. Everybody's moving quickly.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. I'm kind of curious for our panel, and maybe we'll start with Bruce. We've kind of spiraled off into lots of questions about voting day, but what are you looking for in the next 3 weeks, Bruce? I'm going to ask kind of everybody their opinion on this.
I'm looking for Dana to have as few headaches as possible. I'm hoping it's going to go very smoothly, and we want to I want to encourage people who can vote by mail to consider voting by mail, because we want to build capacity for people who have to be in line. If you're going to go vote in person, go to votetravis.com and print out your ballot and mark it up so your vote can be cast faster. Don't bring an electronic device in, but you can bring a paper cheat sheet with you, and that'll make your vote go faster, and it'll encourage you to get farther down the ballot, as Ed talked about earlier. Ann and I both really want people to get down the ballot, and so a cheat sheet will help. So we just want to help educate our community as best as we can to how to do this efficiently and make it work well. I've only heard good things today. I mean, y'all were so overwhelmed, but you handled it well, and that's what Travis County does.
It really does. I got a little better light now. We have had great cooperation with voters, and everything is moving smoothly. We've got a bunch of new folks working in the polling places, and first day there are always jitters. There's always something that they've forgotten with their training. But after these poll workers get through their first day, they're seasoned and they're ready to go, and they will pick up their speed and be much faster and more efficient at whatever their task is. So my hope for the next few weeks is that the early voting workers don't get too tired. It's a long time to cover. We're going to make sure that they get a day off, and we are working in shifts. And the same thing will be true for when we finally do get to election day. The best message I can give to everybody is do not wait until the last minute. Please don't do that. Don't do it to yourself. We have lots of locations, and the easiest thing for a voter to do is to go to, again, votetravis.com and look up the wait times. There's a bunch of new early voting locations. And if you check the wait times, you're going to be looking for a little green traffic icon next to the name of polling places. That's what you're looking for, because the green traffic light says full go. There's no line at that place.
But it's okay to drive to a green dot or to vote where you want to vote and wait, right?
Early voting, all the locations are open to every voter, and the same is true on election day with our vote centers. We've been doing that since 2011, allowing voters to pick any one of the 178 election day locations.
I have a quick question here, Dana, on just name matching. So Julie says she had a friend in Austin, her mail-in ballot. She's concerned that her voter registration name does not match her driver's license name. Does it even matter for mail-in ballots? I mean, as long as you're I'll let you handle it.
Yeah, well, kind of. And we have not had the abuses in Travis County, and I'm not going to allow abuses in Travis County to completely nitpick every teeny little thing as a way to throw out ballots. I don't allow that. So every step we take is always worked by two people. And if they disagree about whatever the action is, either a particular voter's choice is trying to be interpreted or some qualifying measure for accepting the ballot, if these two people don't agree, one says yes, it's okay, and one says it's not, the presiding judge of the counting station comes in and breaks the tie. And we go on a reasonableness premise. If a reasonable person would look at this name, maybe it has one letter missing. Sometimes people leave the E off the end of my middle name. Well, is that going to disqualify you? I don't think so. I mean, if it's wildly different, then yes, we've got a problem. And married women, when they change their names, sometimes run into this problem, especially early on after they've done it. So we want to make sure that we've got a name we can compare and that we know it's you, but we're not going to be nitpicking it.
So Dana, what are you looking for in the next 3 weeks? Are we over the hump here as far as change it? No? Okay, great.
No. Well, we knew the first day was going to be big, and it is. And it's possible because it was so big today that it may be very, just as large turnout tomorrow, a very good turnout. But along about day 3 or 4 or 5, this will smooth out. And so what we do is I'm looking for voters to spread themselves out. Travis County spent a lot of money to put a lot of resources in the field. And if voters will find the location convenient to them that doesn't have a line, we will make the best use of all of our field resources. And that includes for early voting as well as election day. What we don't want is a pile on. That just makes it hard on everybody. So we know there's going to be lines, and the last couple of days of early voting, it will be back to this same big swell like today. We have, as I said, 37 early voting locations. 5 of them are our mega centers. And for the last 3 days of early voting, we will open the mega centers 2 extra hours at night. So they're going to be open until 9 p.m. 5 locations, the last 3 days of early voting, mega centers will offer late voting till 9 p.m. All of that's going to help take the pressure off of both the post office and election day, because those are going to get a workout no matter what.
Yeah, good point. And there's some questions about times and all that good stuff. I would just direct everyone to votetravis.com.
Yes.
And also follow you guys on social. You guys have been doing a really bang up job just reminding us where to drop off or where to hand those ballots in, what times you're running those. You have a nice calendar. So all of that information is readily available out there.
Thank you. Ed, we are trying to keep up with all of that because it's the best way for us to reach the most number of voters.
So, Ed's wife has finished voting.
Yay!
Yes. She's one of the last people in Travis County to finish voting.
A little over an hour to vote.
Yeah, a little over an hour. So that 35,000 number is going to increase, I'm sure.
Increase by another voter, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you've had to wait so long, but thanks for coming out on the first day. You are part of this enthusiastic response.
That's right. And Michelle, I was going to mention, you were mentioning what we hope to see over this last 3 weeks. And today was almost kind of like a crash dress rehearsal for the last few days of early vote. And which, if that's the case, then things are going to go really well. One thing I noticed was the wait time website. In the early morning, it had started out, and if you looked at that map, it was just a sea of red dots.
It was.
And Dana, there seemed to be some changes made to it later in the day where it spread out. You had yellow, red, and green, and it gave a greater range of wait time, which was something that people were asking me about this morning, because it's like everything is over 20 minutes. What does that mean? Now it's going to give people a much better source of information to hopefully go to these other sites. And that's maybe one thing that we can plug in the next few weeks for those really heavy days on the end of early vote is, hey, you can go to Bee Cave, or you can go to Del Valley, or you can go somewhere else and save people a lot of time, and they'll be able to vote. But also though too, I mean, today, early on, you had some people that were, frankly, they were just nervous about COVID. They didn't know how this was going to work, and they were a little afraid. And by the end, people were much more relaxed about it. For a lot of people, this is the first time they've been in a big group situation since March. So, so they're still getting used to that. And maybe over this 3 weeks, they'll be getting used to it and still be careful. Yes. Almost everyone was very careful today. And, maybe they can get used to being careful as well. So by the time we get to election day, we can almost do that in our sleep, I think. That's the big hope out of this. But again, it still was an incredibly inspiring day to see how everything worked. with all these changes, one thing that I think hasn't been mentioned, a lot of these are new voting sites that have never been used before, which I know that always is different for some people, but you know, the kinks were worked out and it worked really well. You guys did a fantastic job today.
Thank you very much. We loved it too. It was really thrilling. You're right though about our wait times. There was an error in the way we had structured it. It was supposed to have an hour. I think it's actually greater than 51 minutes up there. And for some reason, everything got lumped under greater than 20 minutes. So about midday, about noon, we got that fixed to put back the hour time frame so that people would know that there is a big difference between yellow, that's a 20-minute line, and red, that's an hour line.
Yeah, that was great.
Yes, we fixed that. I don't think there's going to be any more messing up with that. And one of the things that now that early voting has started, one of the things that we can tell everybody is that the hand delivered drive-through is open the same hours as early voting. So that's going to be 7 to 7 and then noon to 6 on Sundays. We will be open every day all through the period, and we will also offer, for the early voting period, we will also offer voting hand deliver drive-through acceptance of by-mail ballots on election day. So all those procrastinators, that's where they're probably going to go on election day. We've tried to put in a fail-safe for almost any circumstance.
So Anne, what are your final thoughts tonight?
I've been trying to figure out what I would share. One is, as a candidate, I'm still spending money and raising money. And so over the next 3 weeks, I'm still working to try to make sure that, as you've talked about so many new voters, that we're still reaching out to those new voters and encouraging them to vote down ballot, to vote for me, to vote for Bruce. So still that work from sort of the inner workings of our own campaign. So I'm spending money and raising money. I think another thing, because I have a Republican opponent, is I'm still sort of watching what's going on out there. What's the Trump doing? What's the state doing? What's my opponent doing? And so I'm hoping, I thought that was interesting what Dana said, we're hoping Republicans are voting throughout the weeks also, so that it's not all red at the last minute, and that creates conflict or skepticism or something. I think that's sort of what I'm just still keeping my own campaign alive, but also watching the landscape, making sure there's not any hot spot that I wasn't prepared for and need to respond to.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It felt a little bit like a holiday, even more so in a weird way than election day. I don't know why. Maybe it's what Dana said, we have all this pent up energy. And my husband woke me up at 6 o'clock this morning to go vote, and he's not like that. So I think that if he's like that, then there's a lot of people who are just like, can't wait to vote. And I think that we'll see. I'll be curious to see how this week goes. I mean, maybe we should all meet back and see how this week goes, but I know you guys are busy, so we won't really do that. But I'm kind of curious how this week unfolds. So thank you again for spending a little bit of your time tonight on a very busy day, kind of deconstructing everything for us. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. We really appreciate your participation, your excellent questions that really added to the discussion we had here tonight. I also want to thank our Project Vote Safe leads for Blue Action Democrat Southwest, Rita Berry, Deb Coulter-Brody, Erica Nowlin also on this call, and Ed Scruggs, as you heard earlier tonight, that they have been supporting voters all over Southwest Austin. We also have Blue Action North Austin. They have a very robust voter support project too. Please reach out to your local Blue Action Dems chapter to see how you can get involved. We're taking volunteers all the time. We had a couple of quick questions about how can people help us? We're doing that voter poll support as well. And it's very nonpartisan. We're just providing water and snacks and chairs and just that kind of thing. If you'd like to learn more about our club, get involved, sign up to help. That's blueactiondems.com. blueactiondems.com, and then go to your local chapter from there. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.